guys. Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul. I see you. All right, John. Finish on. Go.
Great job, guys.
Hey there and welcome to episode 243 of the Today's Leader podcast. This week I'm sharing a chat that I had with Frank Forte from North Carolina in the United States. Now for 30 years, Frank's been helping leaders get results. He's helped the US Navy, the US Air Force, the Army. He's helped NASA, and he's worked alongside and within some pharmaceutical companies. He's worked across many different industries, including oil and gas, software, healthcare, construction, banking and finance. Now, Frank began learning about high-performing teams while serving in the Navy on nuclear-powered submarines during the Cold War. There he experienced the effectiveness of high-performing teams and some of the leadership principles that helped build them. Today, Frank speaks, coaches and consults for individuals and companies on how to affect change using lean, agile thinking. Now, Frank is a certified executive coach and holds qualifications that in that particular field. He's done graduate work in software engineering. So his insights are really quite deep in some of the software and entrepreneurial industries. Now, unbeknownst to me, he's also a fellow member of the John Maxwell team, being a founding member of that team when he joined in 2011. Frank shares some brilliant insight into leadership and in a very enjoyable chat. So after hearing from my business, Think Grow Business, it's my pleasure to welcome Frank Forte to the Today's Leader podcast.
The Coach Curl podcast is brought to you by Think Grow Business, the home of the Think Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
It's my pleasure to welcome to the Today's Leader podcast. I have Frank Forte. How are you, Frank?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Now, Frank, you have a business that's Forte Leadership Technology. Tell me about the journey that you've undertaken to get to where you are now.
Well, it's certainly not been a straight line. You know, a lot of folks think that you just start off and you say, I want to be an executive coach, and you kind of go down that road and you get there.
Yeah.
Reality for me is I've done probably a dozen different things. I was listening to one of your recent podcasts and about a startup and database and data analysis, and I've done all those things. I've been involved in 6 different startups.
Wow.
So not at all a straight line. I've worked for major military and corporations like Verizon and large organizations. I've been on my own for the last 10 years or so. But I still serve, different organizational sizes, and I have private clients as well. So I grew up in a restaurant, restaurant business, joined the Navy when I was 17 years old, served on submarines during the Cold War, and then got into consulting, a lot of different things, just along the way, always trying to grow. I've always been a mentor, a coach, someone that wanted to share knowledge and continue to grow.
Excellent. And it's interesting, the journeys that people take is often we'll see the coaches are the ones that are very much focused on their own growth and development, and then really go out of their way to share and to help others in the same journey. So Frank, you're an executive and a leadership coach, but I see you also are an agile specialist as well. So what would you talk me through what you see as your area of specialty?
Well, my niche, so executive coaches, and one of my niches is leadership coaching. I've been a student of leadership ever since I've been in the military on a submarine, because leadership was critical there. If you had poor leadership, people tended to die. So you want to have good leadership.
Absolutely.
So that's probably where I first came in contact with good and bad leaders, quite honestly. And so naturally, I was in the software field for a long time, and Agile, which is a way of thinking about work, came there around 2000. And because of that, I was experimenting with those things long before that, because I led teams that just really weren't happy and weren't ever satisfied. And as a leader, that really frustrated me and irritated me. And so I was constantly trying to figure out how to lead these very knowledgeable, smart, intellectual people in a way that empowered and enabled them to give everything they wanted to the problem at hand.
Yeah. So so tell me about the fit then between agile and leadership, the way that you view that.
We traditionally in the industrial age had this top-down hierarchy, and we didn't need a lot of thinking at the floor level. You know, you were supposed to make so many widgets a day. There wasn't a lot of thinking. It was just what is called red work, right? You just go make the widget. There's not a lot of thinking about how to make it better, learnings. That was all done for the line worker. And so now we have the knowledge worker, the line worker, knowing more than most of their managers, bosses, and owners.
Yeah.
So now we've got this knowledge era, but our organizational structure hasn't kind of changed to align to that. And because of that, we have a lot of frustrated young people that don't like all the constraints that typical organizations put on them. And then the other thing is you have frustrated leaders because now they're not the most knowledgeable person on the subject anymore. Soon in software, as soon as you step away from the keyboard, you get dumb, because the only way you really know what's happening is to look at the code.
Yeah.
So because of that, the philosophy is to basically become servant leaders and turn that pyramid upside down, and put the head of the organization at the bottom, and let them serve and enable the people that are actually doing the work.
So it really is a process around, today's leader is about the leaders of today and for the entrepreneurs of today. And in so many ways, what you're talking about is exactly that. It's leadership for a very specialized skill workforce in where there is a skills deficit between the leader and the team members. So in that case, what are some of the traits that you would expect to see within those leaders of those particular software firms or people or leaders? How do they engage with that workforce?
Quite honestly, they become more coaches than managers, right? I like to say that you lead people and you manage things.
Yeah.
A lot of leaders go get their MBA and then they try to manage everything as if it's a spreadsheet.
Yeah, or a case study.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So now what we've got to do is actually spend a little time getting to know the people, because they're the asset. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in a good way. And figuring out what motivates them, how they want to be rewarded, all those things. See, before we could just give the whole plant a bonus at Christmas time and everybody was happy. Well, that doesn't work. A lot of people want mastery, so they want to be able to experiment more than get more money, for example. So really what I look for and I try to coach leaders is to ask more questions than making statements. And it's open-ended questions. Not that you're going to make that decision based on that answer, but at least you're getting their input. You're getting smarter by asking the question, because you will learn something. A lot of leaders have, kind of a imposter syndrome. They think they have to know all the answers, and if they don't, then they're not seen as being a good leader. That's not it at all.
Absolutely. One of the mentors that I have, and no doubt, looking at one of the quotes on your webpage, someone that's dear to you as well is John Maxwell. So John Maxwell wrote the book Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, and I remember when he launched that book, he was sharing a story in and around some of the meetings that he would attend as a pastor in the church, and there were more senior pastors there, and he never asked a question because ultimately he didn't want to be perceived as the dumb one that didn't ask, that didn't know. And one day he was coming away from a meeting, and he said, the only person I'm actually hurting is myself in that particular line of thinking. And from that comes the statement that when he asked the right questions, he never failed to learn something new. When he told people things, he wasn't learning anything new. So the that concept of asking great questions from our team as a leader is absolutely relevant, because even if the answer is not what we're looking for, at least we know that. At least we know that there's more that we know. So I think that is a fantastic way to coach people. So leaders of today need to be a great coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And often they say, well, I don't have time to get another career. I don't know how to be a coach. So just asking really good questions, open-ended questions that you don't know the answer to. A lot of people try this. They try to fake it, and they'll use the Socratic method, where they'll just it turns into an inquisition or an interrogation. They'll just keep hammering questions until the person, says, I'm out of answers. And then they think they've accomplished something. They haven't accomplished anything except alienating that person and driving fear into the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's inspired you in your leadership journey, Frank?
Well, certainly, right now, my boys, they're all serving in the military, and their leadership journey inspires me to continue to grow. John Maxwell, I'm a certified John Maxwell coach, and have read a lot of his work, met him, been to his house. I think there's people in the military that led me at an early age that I could really look up to in their leadership style. I think there's a lot of good leaders that come out of the military. You think about World War II. Some of those leaders, they were just faced with enormous challenges, right? I just look at it's easy to be a good leader when everything's going well.
Yeah.
It's when things are not going well that leadership really comes to fore.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wasn't aware you're a John Maxwell coach, because that's something I'm very, very proud of, being a part of that team as well. So the John Maxwell team, and g'day to all the JMTers out there that may be listening. So it's I wasn't aware of that, Frank. So that's one thing we have in common. So apart from the fact that they need to be a good coach and they need to ask great questions, and I'm presuming because of that they've got to be good listeners, what are some of the other traits that you would see in great leadership today?
A lot about their adaptability, right? So if you have a plan-driven mindset, which means that I'm going to lay out a plan and then I'm going to just go with that plan, start to finish, and any variation I've got to blame somebody for. So I see that a lot, right? So literally, sometimes it's like you figure out you're going to blame when something goes wrong if you have the wrong leader, right? And I don't mean we don't hold people accountable. We certainly do. But that plan, the way it showed up in that leader's head, a lot of times without any input from the team, that plan is doomed to failure. It just is a matter of time, because again, that leader doesn't know everything the team knows. So more collaboration. Now, will that take time? It probably will up front, but you'll be more effective and efficient if you've got everyone's buy-in and everybody on the same bus.
Yeah.
And leaders think you have everybody on the same bus just because they work for you and you control their pay. But that isn't a bygone era. There's a lot of people that have agency now that will not put up with bad leadership.
Yeah.
The number one reason people leave a organization is because of their manager.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a really sad state of affairs in so many ways, and leaders don't see that. And you mentioned before some leaders seem to have a concept that they need to have to have all the answers. And I remember a conversation I had with Max Story, also on the Today's Leader podcast, and he focuses on blue collar leadership, and so the teams that you lead know your faults better than anybody else. And so for a leader to stand up there, stand tall and try and bluff their way through is so ridiculous in the extreme. But that's what we tend to see. We tend to see leaders putting on what I call the bluff and bluster approach, that they'll bluff their way through, or they'll bluster any sort of stimulated any sort of conversation, and we just don't get the results that leaders, organization, businesses deserve. And, I think one of the real observations, and no doubt you've done this as well when you've been called in to observe things within an organization, one of the first things you see, if you've got quiet meetings, the reality is that we've probably got a leadership issue, because people are either they're not speaking their mind, they're not asking they're not asking questions, they're not having those vibrant discussions that every good team needs to have. And I think that is a real fault or a real failing of leadership. So,
yeah, in Agile, most of the time we don't allow the managers in while we're trying to build a team, because it's so obvious that people shut down. And this is a big cultural thing too. It varies by country. I work with a lot of Indians, and they still are very reluctant to talk, even in front of their American associates or other folks. So you've got to really develop that trust. So that safety and that trust is key to a vibrant organization that can learn and grow and innovate.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the ways that you deal with the inevitable troughs that we face? So you made mention earlier that it hasn't been one smooth path sailing upwards the whole time. So what are some of the personal things strategies that you put in place to help you deal with the inevitable troughs that are going to appear in our journey?
I think keeping a positive mindset. So, one of the things is that I have goals, and those goals, I have setbacks all the time, or I have outright failures. I mean, one is getting comfortable with talking about your failures. I ask people, I interview a lot of other coaches for clients. And so one of the questions I ask is, well, tell me about a failure you've had. And one coach had to go back 5 years, and then he kind of hedged on it and said, oh, no, yeah, I thought it was a failure, but then it turned out to be okay. Not being able to get a grasp on failure is going to hinder you from getting a grasp on success. Because if you're working and pivoting or adapting, those things are not always going to work. I mean, and if they always work, then you're taking too much time figuring them out. And guess what? The world's moved on. The opportunities moved on. It's a fact that the universe is expanding at an accelerating rate. But we as humans, tend not to want to accelerate and change along with that. Yeah. Because, we've got this biology, if you will, that any change in the environment is bad.
Yeah.
So we've got to work on ourselves and just that awareness, right? That awareness that change is accelerating,
Yeah.
that we're resistant to change, and that we've got to start to challenge ourselves on a regular basis. So, yeah, do I get frustrated or disappointed? Yeah, I do. But then I figure out, well, what did I do wrong? In the military, you learn very early that nobody's going to, come and pat you in the back and, let you cry on their shoulder. It's a lot of
Mm.
tough love, but you
Yeah.
figure out quickly that, okay, I've got to figure this out, and I'll figure it out. So,
Yeah.
I think just having the awareness that you can't, to your point, everybody else knows.
Mm.
Everybody else knows if you've crashed and burned,
Yeah.
and you can feel free to deceive yourself all day long. But where does that get you?
Absolutely. And it's interesting in hindsight, people will often, I've been in that situation as well, where you've wanted to walk through some failure from people, and then they turn around and say, "Oh no, I never fail," or what have you. And sometimes it's because they've set the bar so ridiculously low to what they constitute success, and so they're not maximizing their potential anyway. But they're feeling good about themselves because they're not really setting the mark for their own lives. So it's yeah,
Yeah, and there's this a great book called Mindset, and there's two basic mindsets. It's
yeah,
a growth mindset or a fixed mindset, and a lot of people get pushed into a fixed mindset based on their ego. And the more successful you are, the more likely ego is to creep in and not allow you to have that growth mindset anymore.
So speaking of books, Frank, what are you currently reading?
Uh, Black box thinking is one that is fascinating for me, and it's about this very thing about getting a handle on how to fail and getting a different relationship with failure.
Yeah,
And the example is the airline industry. Failure is good. They have a system for basically reporting failures and all kinds of things. And where the medical industry, failures are bad. So nobody ever fails. No, the ego, the head doctor is never wrong.
mm,
It's always the patient's fault when they die. So, it's that contrast again keeps coming back over and over for me. And it really comes down to getting a healthy relationship with failure.
yeah,
And the more, once you have that, then you can try more things and you can learn. It's the scientific method. If you think every time you run an experiment and you fail, that's a bad thing, then you're not going to run very many experiments. You're not going to try to grow your business different ways.
yeah,
You're going to sit there and keep doing the same thing you've done.
yeah, yeah.
And most likely getting the same results.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, doesn't it? That continue to do what we've done to get the results that we've always had. So, I noticed on your website too, you start with the really strong statement of "Let me help you overshoot your goals." So, walk me through why that's so important to you in helping your clients not just achieve your goals, you're helping them overshoot.
I think part of that reason is most people hedge on goals, even, right?
Yeah,
So, and so I have confidence in clients that I take on that I can return 10 times the investment that they make with me. And that's why I have a free half-hour conversation, is because I don't want to bring them on as a
yeah,
client unless they have a really big problem that they need to solve. And
yeah,
it's interesting in coaching. I can know if I'm going to have a great coaching conversation because the first 5-10 minutes, we get into, okay, what would you like to talk about today? And some clients will, oh man, I've been waiting to talk to you about this thing is really bugging me, and we're off to the races. And other clients will sometimes walk in and say, yeah, there's not really much going on. I'm not really thinking about it. And that means that they're not energized. There's not energy about anything in their life right now.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to get that 10-time return out of that type of conversation. And so that's why I've got to know that there's going to be some energy behind that problem.
Yeah.
I often ask the coaching question, if nothing changes, what would it be like a year from now for you? And the really good answers is, well, I won't have my job anymore,
Yeah.
or I'll be divorced, or whatever the answer. Oh, okay. So now we've got some energy and we've got a time box to work with.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. It's executive coaching. I do a bit of that as well, and it's always interesting. Some people. So I'll be contracted by an organization and I'll start coaching a set amount of executives. Some of them embrace the concept wholeheartedly because they're of that growth mindset. The others see it as a hindrance in their day. And those ones that are a hindrance in their day, you mentioned that whole concept of interrogation. Sometimes I get off a phone call and I think, all I've done is interrogate that guy trying to get a conversation going.
Yeah, exactly.
And, it is very challenging. So I think that concept of being a coachable person is also part of being a good leader, being able to coach others, but also be coachable themselves and always looking out for that growth. So, so what's the book that's had the most amazing impact on you in your career, life, where you are now?
Well, I think besides the Bible, I would say Think and Grow Rich, which was written, Napoleon Hill, wrote it in the, late
20s, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, late 20s. Yeah. Because it really started to shift my mind in thinking beyond what you see in front of you.
Yeah.
And starting to create that vision. And now we talk about vision and strategy and road mapping and all that stuff. But a lot of that stuff didn't exist until, the 50s and 60s and 70s. And so kind of going back and having those same things that corporations spend a lot of money on for ourselves, I think was really one of the big breakthroughs. And I read a lot. I read probably five books a month.
Okay.
So and one of the things that I like to say is, readers are leaders and leaders are readers, but also reading makes a broad man, writing makes a precise man.
Yeah.
So you gotta get a lot of information in, but then you've got to distill it so you understand what it means to you.
Yeah.
And that's where I think a lot of people that read a lot don't go to step 2. They don't internalize it. They don't apply it.
Yeah. That application of knowledge is absolutely critical in everything we do. And once again, within my network, I've met people who are constantly learning, constantly going to workshops, learning this, learning that, but never applying what it is that they've learned. And, one of the key ways that I try and work with my, the people that I work with is to really just focus in on, the key takeaways. Fair enough. We might do a full day of leadership training, and at that end of that day, they're going to have all this information. Their choice then is to say, what did I take away? What are my 3 key things that I can start doing or start changing? Because, there is such a thing as an overflowing cup. And we see that more and more with people who think that's who believe that's part of the process. I'll just keep learning, and one day it's all going to click into place. Well, it doesn't click into place unless we actually put something in place.
Yeah. And, absolutely. And accountability is, one of those things with coaching that I really have to focus on. It's like, you have a great conversation, but I gotta come back around at the end and, okay, what are you going to go do by the time we meet again?
Yeah.
And I've got to hear them say it right out of their own mouths or else I have very low probability they're actually going to do it.
Yeah.
And then as a coach, if they don't do it, I've got to hold them accountable,
Yeah.
which is a little dicey sometimes as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Some people don't want to be held accountable, and then it's sort of, part of our process as well as a coach is that accountability is what makes a really good success story for ourselves and for the client, more importantly. So I think that it can be dicey and predominantly because some people just don't want to be held accountable. Some people just love the conversation, don't they, Frank?
Yeah. And if they want to pay my rate for a conversation, I'm happy to listen.
Yeah.
But that's really not what I'm there to do. I'm passionate about coaching. I'm passionate about growth, and at the root, I'm passionate about unlocking the potentiality of all those people that can go solve their own problems.
Yeah.
They just don't believe it yet.
Yeah. I'm also a big believer in that. I want to make myself redundant out of the relationship by giving them the skills and the ability to do exactly that, to drive their own life and to have some processes that they're going to follow that will work for them. So some people will say that's a pretty dumb business model, Tony, but it's one that sits really well with me because you want to provide people with the skills to be able to maximize their own potential.
Yeah, if you get them on an acceleration path and they're growing fast enough, they're going to need you again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to have a great memory of that time spent. So I agree. Frank, what's the vision for you going forward?
Well, right now I do a lot of agile coaching. I have clients that I primarily service, and so I just finished the book. It came out last Friday, so literally hot off the press, or virtually whatever it came off of. It is available.
So that's your book.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's called Agile Mindset Demystified, and
excellent.
And so it's really about when you go into an organization and you're trying to change the culture, you're trying to change the mindset, all the things that kind of come up and challenge you as the coach in trying to do that. So it's certainly a book that individuals can use to reflect on themselves, but also practitioners can use it to as a handbook. So, the real vision is that, you get a whole bunch of individuals and coaches, and this is their handbook now. So when they want to talk about leadership, they go to the L. If they want to go talk about goal, they go to the G. So it's all laid out around the word agile and different words that tie into those letters.
Excellent. How long was the book in the making?
About 2 years.
Yeah.
Talk about some failures. There were a lot of things that came in the way. We moved from Ohio to North Carolina along the way. Just the whole, the COVID thing really took a lot longer to get it out the door. I thought it would have been out months ago. And also, it's that I use that quote on myself a lot, writing makes a precise man. So it went through a lot of edits before I was comfortable saying, hey, this is my offering to the world.
Yeah.
Interesting thing, 97% of the people say they want to write a book.
Yeah.
3% of the people in the world actually write a book.
Yeah. It's I'm reading a book to improve my writing at the moment, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name. But part of the book says to write well, you've got to learn to love to rewrite well. So, it's easy to get your thoughts down on paper, but then to have it something readable for the listener for the reader is a completely different step.
Yeah, I mean, this is my natural format, is having a conversation.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's awesome. I hope to reach a lot of people through this, but I also need to be precise in how I attack the problems that I've observed. The only way I can do that is with the English language, in any real way.
So out of everything that you've accomplished, Frank, over the last, couple of years, what are you most proud of? So obviously the book's something of pride, but outside of that?
Probably just, having a great relationship with my kids, my wife, being down with my grandchildren. I mean, those are the things that give me energy to keep doing everything. So I think it's great. I'm just really thrilled to be giving back to the world and hopefully raising the consciousness, that we can be humane, we can be capitalist, we can be competitive, and we can have fun doing it along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you'd have loved me to ask? And I guess this is your opportunity to jump on a soapbox or to talk through something that you want to talk about?
Well, I just, say to a lot of, and I touched on this is, um, going into a startup, you've got to have the agile mindset. You will face failure after failure.
Yeah.
When you become successful, you can't lose that agility, right? It doesn't go away. We just mask it with larger and larger organizations. So if you're in a large organization and you're not being agile, you're just masking the problem.
Okay. Excellent. So, Frank, how can people connect with you?
Certainly forteleadertech.com, the website. They have an opportunity to schedule a free half-hour conversation, coaching conversation. LinkedIn is where I post a lot. Frank M. Forte is, you can find me there.
Yeah.
And
you're based in North Carolina. So if there's any Australian businesses, we're an Australian podcast, but we have listeners right around the world. So absolutely based in North Carolina. Just be aware of the time zone.
Yep.
That's one of the challenges that this podcast from Australia faces, trying to match up with the time zone. And today's been quite a good day. It's 7 o'clock where I am, 5 o'clock where you are. So it seems to have worked pretty well. Frank, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. I really do appreciate your time.
Absolutely, Tony. Great conversation anytime.
Join the group of people impacted by seriously simple stuff to get you unstuck. The first book by Tony Coach Curl. Available at Amazon, Tony's Simple Stuff provides the tool for people to master your life and aspirations. 20% of every book sold supports Carter's cause.
Well, as promised, that was another insightful interview. Now, Frank has a unique level of experience, and to be honest, I've never seen or talked to anyone who's gone from submarines through to software. So it's pretty clear that he brings value to his client base, and I really like the way he combines leadership development with agile thinking or lean agile thinking. So very similar to what Max Story back then in episode 214 brings with his leadership development into lean. At the end of the day, processes are always about people and systems are always about people. And the better our leadership skills, the better our leadership development, the better the system or the process is going to be. And this gets proven time and time again, yet many companies choose to ignore the fact that developing better leadership skills enhances business in every aspect. And I, for the life of me, sometimes just really scratch my head in relationship to why does leadership development get labelled a soft skill or gets labelled a want as opposed to a need, because we see it time and time again. Notwithstanding the size of your business, developing better leadership skills will help you achieve better results, better outcomes, and greater effectiveness. And that's been proven time and time again. So thanks again to Frank for his insight into leadership and for the tips that he's provided to you, the loyal Today's Leader listener base. Just a reminder, you can check out all the Today's Leader episodes at todaysleaders.com.au. Don't forget, in today's disruptive world, good leadership skills will always stand you in great stead. If you're looking to build better leadership skills, consider our sponsors, Think and Grow Business and the Coach Call Academy. Think and Grow Business is the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind, where we focus on personal, professional and business growth. Check it out at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au, and don't forget to book in for your free 30-minute discovery call. The Coach Call Academy has over 78 programs to help you build a better you. Join for just $1 for the first 30 days. The Academy will equip you and enhance your mindset, your leadership, and your business skills and knowledge. And you can check that out at thecoachcallacademy.com. Don't forget, you are standing stronger, braver, and wiser. Don't forget the golden rule. You know what it is. Just don't be an arsehole. I'll see you all again next week. Bye.